app called Play DJ, basically allowed DJs to stream their sets live over the internet when they couldn't perform in clubs. And they launched on a centralized provider and got like thousands of DJs signed up and started streaming. And they actually had to shut it down in a week because it was bankrupting them to like make this available to DJs for free. Because the infrastructure cost was so much, they would have burned through like $1 million in a month or two. They shut it down, they paused, they relaunched on Livepeer with a much more cost-effective structure. They were able to relaunch their app, create this like subscription platform that was sustainable for the DJs. And it was a nice like success story during the pandemic that helped enable things that couldn't have existed otherwise.
Have you seen the Vitalik wartime arc stuff on the timeline?
No, what's that?
Oh man. Well, basically there's just all this drama at like the Ethereum Foundation, and there's all the kind of layer 2 fragmentation stuff, and Solana is obviously doing really well. And I think they're like voting in a new head of the foundation, and Vitalik changed his PFP to a milady, and he's just been more like aggressive and kind of assertive on the timelines. People are saying it's like a wartime arc. So I didn't know if you'd seen any of that, but
I hadn't caught like the meme of that being the narrative, but I saw Vitalik's statement about I'm choosing the new leader of the EF, and all of you who are criticizing Aya are not helping. Like, so I see it happening in the background, but yeah, clearly I got to get better plugged into how it's all being memed together.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in the Ethereum ecosystem for a long time now. Like, do you have a perspective on the future of Ethereum in terms of L2s and L1s and fragmentation and kind of the progress Solana's had recently? I know you guys moved to, was it Optimism a few years ago?
We're on Arbitrum, just because when we were, we deployed Livepeer 7 years ago on L1 Ethereum, and then over time fees became more expensive. It became prohibitive for our node operators to operate. So we were looking for the right sort of L2 solution, but there were no L2s, right? Like Optimism and Arbitrum were both being built in development. They were both launching around the same time. And our both of them probably could have met our needs. Our dev team chose Arbitrum because it was a little bit better, more compatible dev experience straight out of the gate and available a little earlier. So went there and have been very, very happy. It's met our needs. Our users are not really on chain. They're like video streaming applications. So
Yeah.
the people who power our network, our node operators, care very much. But it's less about what chain we're on and more that the chain meets the needs so our node operators can coordinate and participate effectively.
Let's dive into Livepeer from like a non-technical level of explanation, but I'm really curious how the nuts and bolts process of like video streaming and processing transcoding works. So I know that's like obviously part of kind of the core architecture of the internet, probably how we're doing this call or how many videos are viewed. But yeah, like if you were explaining to a non-technical person, kind of how would you explain the flow of things happening, or the kind of the order of events that happens with Livepeer and video processing and what you guys do?
Listen, so yeah, Livepeer's mission for 8 years has been to build the world's open video infrastructure. As you can imagine, doing video over the internet is still very challenging and expensive and hard to scale, just judging by how often you see buffering or low quality video on major events, or you have hiccups in your video chats, etc. And so from the beginning, we've had the thesis that an open infrastructure where people with excess compute and bandwidth could join this network and contribute that to power video streaming. Video is 80% of the traffic on the internet. They could earn money for doing so, and you can create this like reliable, cost-effective global video infrastructure to sort of be an alternative to the big cloud platforms like Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud that we're really the only scale of players in town. So to address your question, what does that mean? How does it work? Maybe in not super technical terms. If you're doing a video broadcast over the internet, like let's say you have a show or a sporting event or a conference live stream that you want to do, typically what you do is you capture the video at the source. You need to ingest it into a sort of point of entry ingest server to like put it on the internet, if you will. So that ingest server is typically in the cloud. And then what you want to do is you want to do this compute step where you convert the sort of high quality HD stream that's captured into all the different formats and bit rates that are necessary to deliver video to all the different device types out there, on different connection speeds, right? So, someone sitting with their, cable connection plugged in, watching HD 1080p or 4K video is receiving a different file than someone on their mobile phone on a 3G connection watching in as they're scrolling through Twitter, they're receiving like a much lighter file that's been encoded. So that big compute step that does all those conversions of one video into like 48 different videos, that's called transcoding. And that is typically done by GPUs, the same type of devices that are, really popular in AI model training and AI inference and gaming and 3D rendering and whatnot. And so at its core, like one of the main functionalities of the Livepeer network is that these GPU owners and operators from all over the world put these GPUs onto the Livepeer network, and they say, "Hey, this is available. I'm available to encode video." And so when a video application that's built on Livepeer wants to stream video, it's using the Livepeer network and all these node operators to do their video encoding. Right now, after these videos have been encoded, they need to be maybe stored if they're video on demand assets, or if they're live stream assets, they need to be basically delivered to every viewer. And the piece of software that delivers video is called a media server. It knows how to speak all these different protocols. It knows how to stream little bits of the video to different players and browsers as they're requesting it. You're not downloading a whole video at once. You're sort of requesting the little bits for the next frames you're going to watch. And so Livepeer is this great open source media stack and open source media server that our users use to build applications that can also deliver video globally, around the world. And of course, it integrates with existing CDNs, centralized or decentralized versions. It integrates with storage networks, centralized or decentralized networks. Livepeer has its own player, so you can embed a player in the browser and you can get analytics about who's watching your videos and how it's performing and everything. So there's a really complex video stack that's a combination of software and, compute infrastructure. And the Livepeer network, is that compute infrastructure. And it's 10 times more cost effective than using the clouds, but the project also has all the video software that developers need to build their applications. So I'll stop talking in a minute, but to give you some examples, we power a lot of social media applications. In Web3, things like apps in the Lens and Farcaster ecosystems. If they have video functionality, they often use Livepeer as the underlying infrastructure to do the processing and storage and serving of that video. We power Web2 traditional streaming apps that look like Twitch. Some of the world's top streaming apps use Livepeer. We power a lot of event streaming apps, and conferences use Livepeer to power all the live streams coming out of their events. Internet game shows, and now increasingly we can talk about this. Early apps that are beginning to experiment with what AI video looks like, AI generated videos, AI processed videos. So I'll pause there, can dive into all that, but hopefully that's a helpful overview.
Yeah, that was, I think, very clear and easily understandable. I was definitely going to ask about like you guys plugging into CDNs as like the delivery mechanism for the video once it's transcoded. So I'm glad you mentioned that. In the same way that renders using idle GPUs for rendering videos, like almost like the creation of them or graphics, sounds like you guys are doing something very, very similar for transcoding and for kind of like, I guess, live stream video transmission. In the Web2 world, who typically pays for the cost of transcoding? Is it like the live stream app that an event might be using?
That's right. It's always the application that creates the full video experience needs to build their video stack. So they might be paying for, all those layers I mentioned: ingest servers, CDNs, compute for transcoding, storage, AI processing, right? And of course, those costs ultimately have to get passed on to the end users in some way, right? So, imagine you're a event streaming platform like the old, livestream.com, for example. You're building that full stack, you're paying for all those costs, but then maybe you're charging your users subscriptions to be users of your platform, or you're charging them on a per event basis, or you're charging them based on how much viewership they have at the end of the day, right? And typically, you bundle all your costs and services and you pass it on to your users. Your app might be free to users, but you're monetizing
Ads.
them via advertising and
Yeah.
harvesting their data, right? So our thought is, by driving down the cost significantly of this really important form of media, video, you can actually enable applications to exist that maybe couldn't have existed under 10x more expensive cost structures, or apps can exist that have better relationships with their users, where they don't need to be like monetizing their data or bombarding them with ads, or charging them for things they don't want. Saw a good example of that during the pandemic, when app called Play DJ basically allowed DJs to stream their sets live over the internet when they couldn't perform in clubs and whatnot. And they launched on a centralized provider and got like thousands of DJs signed up and started streaming. And they actually had to shut it down in a week because it was bankrupting them to like make this available to DJs for free. Because the infrastructure cost was so much, they would have burned through like $1 million in a month or two. And they shut it down, they paused, they relaunched on Livepeer with a much more cost-effective structure. They were able to relaunch their app, create this like subscription platform that was sustainable for the DJs. And it was a nice like success story during the pandemic that helped enable things that couldn't have existed otherwise.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think I saw a Fred Again set streamed somewhere. So maybe that's probably the same use case for the same customer, but that's really, really cool.
Yeah, Fred Again and Skrillex and Fortet did a couple streams on the lot radio, one of our users that streams 24/7 DJ sets from a shipping container in Brooklyn. But that set was actually, they had Times Square take over, so it was in Times
Nice.
Square with a huge crowd. And that they've been streaming 24/7 on Livepeer for 4 or 5 years now. Really great use case.
That's wild. Does the 10x cost reduction come mostly because you're just tapping into kind of net new supply, this latent supply, and so you can decrease prices that way? Or is there anything about the decentralization of nodes themselves that contributes to cost reduction, like it would in a decentralized CDN maybe?
Yeah, really good question. So this gets into the crypto side and the tokenomics of Livepeer and the benefits of decentralization. I think there's two main reasons driving the cost reduction in the early days, right? The first, you alluded to, when you have this open competitive marketplace where anyone is available to monetize their idle compute, that creates competition, and that drives down prices, right? That's an alternative to, let's say, a cloud provider that says, oh, you're building a live stream app and you expect to maybe have 1,000 people streaming at once at your peak. Like, we have to buy and provision servers to handle 1,000 people. And whether 200 or 300 or 400 people are streaming, you have that like paid off capacity that's expensive to maintain, and they're going to charge a markup and a margin, right? They actually charge like 4x what the bare metal cost is. So cloud providers, sometimes you see them charging $3 per hour to do transcoding on live video. Whereas in an open competitive marketplace, you have all these GPUs around the world that are used for things like mining and AI inference and gaming and even transcoding to a sense, and they have transcoding encode and decode chips on them that sit there doing nothing if you're using those GPUs for other things like mining. And so Livepeer says, oh, it's an open marketplace, just put those chips available on Livepeer and you'll make extra money when they're idle without having to do anything else. And so you have this already paid off, already deployed hardware that it's just competing to earn any extra money it can. And as long as you're making more than the cost of your electricity or bandwidth, it's a no-brainer. So we see cost reduction from the open permissionless marketplace. The second thing is more based on like crypto economic incentives. This helps a lot in the early days of a network as it's being bootstrapped, probably diminishes over time as it scales. But networks like Livepeer, in sort of the work token model that we pioneered, they're trying to issue the sort of ownership of their networks through tokens to those who are helping power and build these networks, right? Like everyone who's running these networks and powering it should be the people who own and have stake in these networks. So, Livepeer is an inflationary model. It's issuing tokens every day to the node operators that are bringing the GPUs. And those tokens, you know, have a perceived value, right? And because you're earning those tokens that the protocol is issuing, you're essentially earning income. And that means that if you want to like break even or be profitable on the actual hardware you're running, you also are charging fees in ETH for the apps that are using the network, but you can charge them less because the amount of value of like the Livepeer token you're earning can offset the fees that you need to charge and still break even. And again, that's sort of like in the early bootstrapping token issuance phase, that can be really powerful. It can attract a lot of supply and help drive down prices. Over time, you need the portion of fees to equate to more and more value relative to like the inflationary token being issued. And you see that in all Bitcoin, ETH, and DeepIn networks as well.
For sure. Yeah, both of those are definitely kind of core tenets of the DeepIn thesis around building physical or kind of like physical digital infrastructure. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe give us a quick state of the network kind of snapshot or update in terms of like number of nodes online on the supply side, the types of jobs they're servicing, and then also on the demand side, kind of like any revenue numbers you can share, and if there's like a percentage of revenue that accrues to the token, just kind of the typical DeepIn questions we'll ask our audience.
Yeah, definitely. I'd encourage everyone to check out explorer.livepeer.org, which is a great dashboard that has a lot of this information. Our protocol has 100 node operator slots. We call them orchestrators. So the top 100 nodes that stake get those slots and they get to compete for the work. Many of those, or some of those node operators are running pools where they let any GPU operator around the world join their pool and provide compute, sort of as you think of it as like a layer 2. The protocol doesn't know about pools, but they create this, software on-chain or off-chain protocol that allows for participation. So you have like thousands of GPU operators putting GPUs on the network. Beyond that, if you don't run a GPU or don't run hardware, you can participate as a delegator. You can stake Livepeer token towards one of these node operators on their behalf. That'll earn them more work. And in exchange, they'll share a portion of their fees and token rewards with you as a delegator. So you actually see the sort of increase in the amount of tokens that people are earning. The inflation rate's pretty high right now. It goes up dynamically based on how many people are participating. You see delegators and node operators earning about like 50% annual increase in the amount of tokens that they've staked at the moment. So it's been pretty attractive. In terms of fees, there's about between like $4,000 and $6,000 of transcoding fees that are computed over each week by those node operators coming from the apps that are using the network for transcoding and AI processing. That ranges from social media apps to event streaming apps, as I was mentioning before, some of the leading Web3 social applications. And then the real big game changer, the big initiative, the thing that everyone is focused on is, hey, for the last like 6 months or so, our node operators are not just doing transcoding jobs, they're also beginning to do AI media inference jobs, meaning they are accepting jobs to generate videos from prompts using models like video diffusion. They're doing jobs to generate images. They're running LLMs to do, text-based responses to input queries. And some of these are being built into early applications like agent frameworks like Eliza, and sort of media generation, creative applications. There's a big focus on sort of something that's we're getting ahead of the curve. There's not a lot of applications built around this yet, but there will be. It's how AI is going to impact live video. So we have some great demos where you and I could be on a call like this. We'd have our webcams and our live stream going, but you could side by side have a window that's responding to creative prompts. And it's, instead of showing me, you could type like Incredible Hulk and it'll like turn me and what I'm doing into the Incredible Hulk in real time without, under half a second of latency as I'm moving around. And then you could change the prompt to like, Jesus wearing a crown. And all of a sudden it morphs from like the Incredible Hulk into Jesus wearing a crown. And these are becoming interactive, where you can have like, if you touch the right square on the screen, then it applies like a different effect or changes the output. And what are people going to do with this crazy stuff? in creative senses, it totally remains to be seen. But there's also a lot of use cases for like analyzing video in real time to be able to make investment decisions or safety decisions or business decisions. And basically, like Livepeer, because of our live streaming stack and to end in this network of GPUs, really well suited to be the infrastructure that powers like video or AI is applied to live video. So we're big initiative, this year to get ahead of that and open up those capabilities and increase the feeds on the network.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I saw a chart that once you guys turned on basically like AI demand or AI use case servicing, revenue kind of jumped pretty dramatically. And I think that that trend will probably continue. And it makes sense, right? You have this network of GPUs out there that are trusted in the sense that like they've staked tokens, they have kind of like financial capital at stake if they were to be bad actors, and so they're not. And so they're already doing jobs for the network, they're already being paid by the network, they're already staking tokens on the network. Why not kind of tap into the other, utilities or services that those GPUs can provide for like a growing kind of demand segment?
That's right. At its core, the Livepeer protocol just coordinates, compute willing to perform jobs, right? Like there's nothing in the protocol that says what that job type has to be, or, anything lower level than that. It settles payments, it secures the work via stake, it routes the work via, how much stake is on the nodes. So at its core, it could be anything. But one thing we have found, unlike many other like generic compute networks or, decentralized Amazon Web Services type projects, et cetera, we found that our like really intense focus on our mission of video has created differentiation for us, because it's a niche where you actually have to have a lot of expertise, build a lot of software around video, be able to plug into existing video ecosystems. It's a huge market. So it's differentiated for us, but it's also given us focus. It's allowed us to build a team and community that cares about that specific thing, brings video experience and expertise. And, we're not just trying to do everything at once, which is, the death knell in many startups.
Definitely. And yeah, you guys wouldn't have stuck around for, I think you said 8 years, if you'd been kind of chasing every new fad or trend that popped up. What advice would you have for founders on building something in crypto that lasts that long? Because that's very rare to accomplish. I mean, 8 years ago was what, 2017. That's very early for crypto as a whole, but specifically for Deepin. I mean, it's got to be one of the earliest kind of Deepin projects. So yeah, what advice would you have to founders on building something that lasts in crypto?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, we've sort of seen it all. We've been through all the cycles. When we started building, things looked entirely different than they did even 12 months later, and then 24 months later, and now, years and years later. So definitely a couple of key pieces of advice. One is that having a mission that you care about helps, right? Work on the thing you care about and stick to the mission, because that can be like the orienting thing that keeps you going and motivated when there's so many distractions and so many swings in the market cycles, right? I wouldn't say that's the way to like, it's not the most opportunistic way to build a startup. It doesn't mean you're going to make the most money in the short term by, like you could if you pivoted to the hot fad of the day really successfully and captured the opportunity. So if you don't care what you're working on, you just want to find that fit right away, you should be very, very adaptable and resourceful. But if you care what you're doing, you have a mission and that resonates with your community and your team, then stay on that path, right? I think the second is like, think about your values, have high integrity, and ignore the noise, right? Because once again, there's so much temptation and noise out there where you can almost convince yourself that things that seem like nonsense actually are substantive and you should be spending time there and shifting to that. But once you like lose your path, you lose the story, you lose your way, and you like lose your conviction, what's happening as the winds change or the market shifts, then you're sort of left there holding nothing. But if you can kind of fall back to your values, your initial convictions, and stay on that path, then you'll be in it for the long term. As we've seen, even though like Livepeer has done great in many respects, we have the most amazing community, a great diverse token holder base. We're plugged into the ecosystem. We have great early users in Web 2 and Web 3. But even that said, we haven't had the moment where, all of a sudden every user is lining up out the door to sign up for Livepeer, and it goes like this, and we're still on that journey, particularly with the real-time AI bet and everything. So it is a long battle that you're fighting, and you have to be excited to fight it.
For sure. What would you say your go-to-market's like on the demand side or plan kind of to really ramp demand? Because it sounds like you've got the network built out and the infrastructure in place on the supply side and a whole kind of token economy that's working. So yeah, how do you think about go-to-market on the demand side?
Yeah, what we had been doing, and we've been through many iterations of this. The thing that's working, but sort of more slowly, is your traditional like B2B sales-based go-to-market in the video industry, right? Like the users of video infrastructure at scale are these big existing applications or platforms, and they have their stack, and you have to go in and sell to them and convince them that, hey, this cost savings is meaningful, it'll make a difference, it's worth the switching cost or the integration cost, right? And that's a 6 to 12 months process sometimes, and it leads to lumpy growth when a new app comes on, but then you might churn an old user. And like I said, it's always grown, but sort of steadily, right? Um, Now, I'm really excited about this sort of new big bet around real-time AI video, because that is not, at this phase anyway, is not so much like an enterprise sales oriented motion. It's much more of a grassroots, hacker centric, creative innovator type motion where it's like, hey, look at these fun new things you can do with video using AI models. Like Livepeer is a platform where you can chain these models together. You can experiment with different effects. We have the whole infrastructure that can run these models on live streams. No one else has that. Show up, play around, show off your outputs, inspire others, participate in the community. And you actually have this like community oriented go-to-market where you're trying to get thousands of hackers and innovators playing and having fun and experimenting. And then many of those will, yeah, they'll take these capabilities into work, right? They'll be entrepreneurs and founders that create applications using these new things. And just like you've seen with, you know, GitHub got brought into the enterprise because you had all the hackers and open source devs like, tinkering around and sharing code there and then bringing it to work, right? Or Hugging Face is a huge platform for AI development because they have all these open models people can play around, and then all of a sudden you bring them into work, right? So I think we'll see that sort of more scalable motion happen over time, but for now it's about community building and growth and thousands of innovators playing around with this.
Definitely. Somewhat of a selfish question, but are you aware of any platforms that would allow you to compare an edited video with the raw file and then train an LLM, or maybe not an LLM, but train an AI model based off of that to basically edit in that style? I'm curious for myself for like the podcasting game, because that would be very interesting.
Oh, you're not talking about like detecting if a video was modified. You're talking about like,
Not that,
okay,
like
I have
actually
this
editing. Yeah.
editing. Okay, so I have this recording, and hey, here's a great polished output of something else that I like. Can we convert this style to that style? That's I'm not aware of any tool that solves that for you today. I wonder what that, I don't know if there's a name for that type of model or technique, but that would be an interesting, like if it doesn't exist, it would be an interesting maybe contest to run and incentivize AI researchers to try and like build models that bring that capability. And if you're familiar with platforms like Bitensor, I think that they offer the opportunity to like run challenges that incentivize a bunch of researchers to submit better and better models. And then the output, you might get a model that can do that. And then when you can do that, then you need an infrastructure to run it on, right? And that might be an infrastructure network like Livepeer if it's video oriented, or another decentralized compute provider.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that. I know some folks in the Buterin ecosystem, because you could basically replace podcast editors. And I feel like the AI models of today could probably do that. Like if I gave them a bunch of our old episodes and the raw files and then like what my editor produced, it should be pretty trivial to like for the AI model to learn off of those. And the editing's pretty simple, right? It's like when only I am talking, cut to me. When only you're talking, cut to you. When we're both talking, or at the beginning of like a question or answer, cut to both of us. But that stuff mixed in with some kind of like audio leveling and lighting, kind of basic, maybe even like preset stuff, I think would be pretty interesting to see done. So I'll ask the BitCenter folks about that.
Yeah, I think like the lighter versions that I've seen of that are you feed in a raw video file and then AIs can like share an output that's like vertical video format oriented for like TikTok, or one that like you have like a video of like a panel speaking and doing a panel presentation, but then the AI can like zoom in on whoever is speaking at the time in order to like share the close-up of that person. So you're seeing like very light versions of this begin to play out.
For sure. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for your insight on that. Last question would be the Treasury. It's now a little over $7 million. So kind of how did those funds get there? And then what are they going to be used for, in your opinion?
Yeah, so this has been a really exciting thing that's happened in the last like year plus in Livepeer. Unlike many projects, Livepeer, or many newer projects that you see, Livepeer didn't start with this like big reserved block of token in any centralized place for, you know, a grants program or a treasury fund or even the team, right? The team certainly had like a small block, but not like you see some of these projects hold, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of the tokens back for like future use. So all the public goods funding was through just participation in the network. Like you could run a node, you could campaign and say, I'm running this node, but I'm also building this project in the ecosystem, stake towards me, I'm gonna earn inflationary token and fun things. That worked pretty well, but over time on the decentralization roadmap, the community certainly wanted like more opportunity for funding to be routed to people who were doing things running more beyond just running hardware. So there was a governance proposal over a year ago that said, let's create an on-chain treasury that's community governed. And the way it'll be populated is that every round, which is about a day, when there's these new inflationary Livepeer tokens given to node operators and delegators, 10% of the inflationary rewards will instead go into this on-chain treasury. And so it'll start, there'll be 0 tokens in it, but after one day, there'll be 200 tokens, and the next day it'll be 400 tokens, and then 600, 800, 1,000 tokens, etc. And over the past like year and a half, it's grown to have a couple hundred thousand Livepeer tokens with, I think you mentioned worth $7 million today. Now, community members can make proposals of what they want to work on and fun things. Typically, like an app or one dev wouldn't make a proposal. Instead, people form like entities that have a mission. They'll make big proposals. They'll route out funding to sort of end users and whatnot. But there's been 10 different entities approved for funding so far, releasing to the tune something of around $1 million. They've made a huge impact. The whole Livepeer AI capabilities were first developed by one of these entities called the AI SPE. That's grown to be a full core development team with, I think, 6 or 7 core devs that work on Livepeer full time. So Livepeer Cloud SPE, they run gateways, they do front-end development of the Explorer, testing frameworks. There's marketing and growth-based and education programs like Live Pioneers that do token holder education and community management. And so now, instead of there just being like a loosely organized group of core contributors and, Livepeer, the company developing the protocol, now there's like 10 different entities that are all doing core development, full time and in self-sustainable ways on this protocol funded from the Treasury. And there's a lot of capital available. So it's really a goal to, release more funding to more capable and dedicated teams to build out, around the Livepeer ecosystem. So really excited about like the long-term sustainability and decentralization of the project.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear, and I'm glad you guys have made all that progress in the time that you've been building towards decentralization. It sounds like it's a pretty robust, set of community members and different businesses and kind of just operating groups that have spun up within the Livepeer ecosystem. Well, Doug, this has been great. Thank you for coming on and sharing more about Livepeer. If you had a call to action or anywhere on the internet you wanted to direct people to learn more about Livepeer, where would you point them or ask them to do?
Yeah, they should definitely go to livepeer.org. And the first thing they should do is join the Livepeer Discord, where they can be part of this like thriving community of sort of people who believe in the future of AI video, and there's a ton of innovation happening. There's a whole hacker program of people producing awesome inspirational outputs to be used and shared and help chart the future there. So yeah, check out livepeer.org, jump in the Discord, and there's a great welcoming community there to help you out.
Sweet. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yep. Thanks, Connor.